And the next presentation will be by Martin Pérgola and Lydia Galagovsky. And the subject is Modeling Cellular Respiration, Educational Reflections. So please, the floor is yours.
Okay, Elena, thank you very much. I am sharing the screen. Okay, first of all, I'm shining. I don't know how to stop shine. Literally. First of all, we want to thank the organizing committee for their kind invitation to us for speaking at this symposium of the International Society for the Philosophy of Chemistry. I am Martin Pérgola. Lydia and I work at the Center for Research and Teacher Training on Science Education at the School of Exact and Natural Science, University of Buenos Aires. Our field of research is the didactic of chemistry, but in our works, meta-theoretical analysis based on epistemology and philosophy of science of chemistry, is a fundamental tool. To start with my talk, Modeling Cellular Respiration, Educational Reflections, we assume that humans agree to explain and operate on reality based on mental models. However, expert and novice students' mental models differ due to a specific previous knowledge that alters their cognitive competencies to process information. Science education meets difficulties when complex discourses should be communicated, because many times the students construct wrong mental models concerning scientific concepts. The main goal of this presentation is to show you a research about a clear example of these mentioned difficulties. First, we will do a brief conceptual meta-theoretical analysis of the very popular analogy between chemical combustion and cellular respiration. Let us see which is our theoretical approach about different types of models and their relationship with chemistry teaching. Experts construct their knowledge supported by a lot of information, in particular, scientific information. This information is expressed through languages that use codes and syntax formats. Then, expert mental model is created in the mind of each expert. Expert mental model, to be communicated, must be transformed into explicit models that are clippings of information. Experimental models about the same phenomenon may differ in other scientists' minds. When we talk about models, we consider a Geer's approach that emphasizes the non-linguistic, often imaginistic character of models. Idealized systems present in science texts are models. We assume that this non-linguistic character of the model, which are idealized systems, are the corresponding part of the expert mental model, and the part present in texts are our explicit models. Now, who are experts? Well, we consider that experts are scientists and teachers in the context of science education, of course. And now, mental models cannot be transferred from the mind of the experts to the mind of the novices. There are different ways to explain a specific scientific model according to the target audience. Then, in educational context, explicit models by specific didactic transpositions can be transformed into different school science models. Of course, these school science models are examples of explicit models. But What about novices? What about students? What is the relation between the teaching devices, the different models, and their previous knowledge, the students' previous knowledge? Well, as we have said before, science education meets difficulties when complex discourses should be communicated. Then, teachers and scientists use teaching devices, different teaching devices, that are part of explicit models. As students' previous specific knowledge is far apart from that of experts, they face difficulties processing complex scientific information. So, most of the times, some students need to repeat studying by rote learning school science models and teaching devices in order to pass the exams. Meanwhile, they construct their idiosyncratic mental models far from a deep understanding of the expert scientific mental model. As we have said before, the main goal of our presentation is to show you a brief research where we have done a brief conceptual meta-theoretical analysis of the very popular analogy between chemical combustion and cellular respiration. We assume that analogies are examples of teaching devices, at least in the educational context, of course, and that verbal, graphical, chemical formula, or mathematical language are different examples of languages. Within this theoretical framework, let us settle down in our example, considering the teaching device of presenting two very similar equations as condensed representations for cellular respiration. So these are the equations. In both equations, glucose and oxygen are reagents, but while the equation boxed in green is a case of chemical formula language, the expression of cellular respiration, the equation boxed in blue, is not, because of the 32 ATP molecules. To summarize, we know that methane combustion is the typical example of chemical combustion. In fact, it is often used as an example to teach chemical change or combustion, as it is considered as an everyday phenomenon for students. The equation boxed green represents glucose chemical combustion and obviously meets the condition of mass conservation and stoichiometric ratios. However, the equation boxed blue, with the inclusion of the 32 ATP molecules, turns the representation into an analogy. That is because this expression does not meet the condition of mass conservation in a balanced equation, as well as the stoichiometric relationship. So we consider it as an example of an analogy. Epistemological analysis of an analogy as a teaching device needs a strict correlation of underpinning scientific concepts. Still, we have to question if it is so easy to burn glucose. Is it feasible to burn glucose? How similar are combustions of methane and glucose with respect to cellular respiration? Well, let us check what information is hidden behind these two little pieces of scientific discourses when underpinning concepts are not discriminated. The combustion of methane and glucose occurs in a single volume, while cellular respiration occurs in different cell compartments. Methane is a gaseous fuel, while glucose is solid or acidic fuel when it is burning. But in cellular respiration, glucose is dissolved in aqueous solution in biological tissues. In the combustion of methane and glucose, there is a direct combination of reagents, but in the case of glucose, several reactions occur previously and simultaneously, while in cellular respiration, glucose and oxygen do not react directly. Methane combustion is instantaneous and occurs in one path of reaction with high activation energy. In the burning of glucose, heat induces early dehydration and decompositions, and the small molecules are what finally burn. And so respiration takes place in enzyme complex, where biochemical concatenated reactions with low activation energy, each one occur. Well, there are some more differences. For example, the energy release during combustion as heat is reported as a negative enthalpy balance, while in the cellular respiration, the energy release mainly as formation of ATP molecules. Catalysts do not participate in combustion, not necessarily, while highly specific enzymes participate in cellular respiration. And at last, protons and electrons needed to reduce oxygen to water come from methane or glucose in combustion, while protons to reduce oxygen come from the cell environment, and electrons come from cofactors like NADH and FADH2 in cellular respiration. In conclusion, we can say that the presentation using chemical reaction languages hides the aspects, at least the aspects shown here. These are the most relevant aspects that scientific discourses hide. So we made a research with 99 novice freshman students of a biology course at university level. This was the first biology course they had. They weren't our students. It wasn't our course. In the courses where the research was conducted, there was a specific 3-hour class to teach cellular respiration, with the analogy included. In these classes, the teachers mentioned that cellular respiration occurs in different cells compartments, that there are between 15 and 18 concatenated biochemical reactions, and that energy is mainly released as ATP formation. But, however, there was not a single reflection on the meaning of using the analogy between cellular respiration and chemical combustion. The students were asked with a specific research device after the exam where these contents were evaluated, and some of them were then interviewed. What did we find? Here we present some examples of their answers. For example, that cellular respiration occurs when there is a direct contact between glucose and oxygen in the cells. 27% of the 99 students think with mental models similar to those expressed by these students. If there is a lack of glucose, a general discomfort is generated in the person. It is because it's not been able to react with 53% of students think with the mental models similar to those expressed by these students. In respiration, you start with a very large molecule, such as glucose, and you reach 32 molecules of ATP, and water molecules, which are very small compared with those of glucose, of course. 29% of the students think like that. And last, the oxygen is inhaled through the nose, then it reaches the lungs, and there the energy of oxygen is transferred to the ATP that will go to all the cells of our body. 39% of the students think with mental models similar to those expressed by this expression. So, our conclusions. We have three important different concepts. First, expert mental models, explicit teaching devices, and novice students mental models. We conclude that those explicit teaching devices, which are clippings of experts mental models, are the linguistic sources to induce novice students mental models. Those students mental models can strongly differ from experts mental models. That is why novice students often have difficulty understanding scientific discourses, and this leads to many learning difficulties. The epistemological analysis we carry out shows that many of the problems behind the learning of biochemical models of cellular respiration could be unveiled by finding some theoretical elements underpinning the traditional teaching discourses. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Martin, for your interesting talk. It's now time for a question. I see one comment by Michelle in the chat, but I guess it refers to the previous presentation, as it deals with the quantum mechanics and teaching quantum mechanics to children. And I see a question from Jesus.
Thank you, Martin, for your report. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, my question is more a curiosity. I would like to know more about what means the imaginistic when you talk about the non-linguistic models, maybe? Imaginistic, do you remember? Are you mute? You are mute.
Está silenciado, Martín.
Yeah, you have to switch your...
Okay.
Okay.
No, we emphasize the character of non-linguistic, the non-linguistic character of the models, because we consider that that we need representations of different kinds using different examples of languages to express, to communicate, to show, if you like, this kind of models. We think there are not only one or not a representation we could allow us to show the whole model or the complexity of the whole model So each representation implies a cut of this model. Some elements you choose to show of this model. When I say to show is to communicate to this model. So we consider this part of the non-linguistic character of the model implies that there is no only one representation you could use as an explicit model to communicate the whole model, the entire model. I don't know if I answered your question, Jesus.
No, it's good. Very useful. Thank you.
There's another question from India.
Well, thank you, Martin and Lydia. Very clear, your presentation, very clear. And well, you have a, I
think that Martin should mute.
There's an echo, yeah, probably.
Oh, sorry, I mute.
Sweet, yeah, thank you.
Yes, no, I'm saying that you are lucky because you have a laboratory of education in your courses, so you can test many of your reflections really on the field. My question is this: you are stressing the strong difference between expert mental models and student mental models. The question is this a real problem, or is unavoidable, or is something, this difference, I mean, educators have to try to make this difference as little as possible? What's the position about, your position about this difference?
Yes, may I answer? We assume that it is easy to teach, but it is not so easy to learn. And in particular, in chemistry concepts. So maybe scientists consider it is so easy to teach. But our problem is the gap between understandings and just saying or showing or represent what the experts have in their mind. So we don't think it is a problem to approach both models. It is impossible. We are people. We need to have some previous knowledge to process new knowledge. So you cannot get close scientists' minds and novices' minds. It is impossible for us. You can teach to a 7-year-old boy or girl quantum mechanics, but what would he or her learn about that? Maybe they construct their own imaginistic model. So our difficulty is how to analyze students' mental models without asking them directly, what have you learned? Because if you ask, what have you learned? They repeat exactly, and they are trained to that, what they have been taught. But no, it is not the expression of their own model they have constructed. So we have implement different devices to fish their mental models, some ideas, and then in a comfortable moment, volunteer students without the punishment of being evaluated. So they say after the exam on the topics. So we found that, and it's we always find that they don't learn in the first university courses. It's we made a parallel study with the students from the 4th years in biology and chemistry courses, and of course they understood, but not in the freshmen. So a freshman may go to study medicine or biochemist, or to be a physician, I don't know, different careers, agronomy and everything. And they kept that idea because never again we'll see those topics. So we show and share with you the problem and how we take this problem to be, and in that action we need philosophical or epistemological instruments, which is a model, argumentation, and what happens in mind, cognitive sciences, and other sciences. Because communicating is a very broad problem. You have to have knowledge, specific knowledge, and you have to think about how the students process information and what do you say and how do you express. And many of these talks we have shared in this meeting, in this symposium, you have discussed about meanings of the same word. Imagine when you have to learn. The student always said, but which is the meaning? Why should I study this? No, all these important questions, they do it for themselves. That's the reason I think there is so few students that want to study chemistry, because we have not solved our problems. What do you have to teach, as Bruno asked?
But what you make very, very clear that it's not that the strategies are not the same in different levels. It's not the same in the first course and the last course at the university or the secondary school, and not even the goals of teaching chemistry are the same. So, I mean, chemical education is something very, very wide, but then you have to focus in different contexts of education. It's not not everything is the same. I mean, not the same strategies, not the same goals. So it's a very hard matter.
Yes, I want to add something more.
Please.
Thank you, Olympia, for your words. And I want to say that what we see and what we saw in this research with freshman students and third or fourth year students is that freshman university students at least doesn't know about chemical combustion, and they couldn't compare it with cellular respiration. So the question is what we could do with the expert mental models and the novices mental models. I think there is a qualitative difference between their mental models and the way they think about a phenomenon. We know about chemical combustion. We know that chemical combustion of methane is different to chemical combustion of glucose. And we know why we could compare it with a cellular respiration. We know it. And we know that in cellular respiration, oxygen and glucose never react directly. But what did it mean? What does it mean to a novice freshman student? Well, we found that it has no meaning, because it's so far from their knowledge that it had a meaning which confused. It not allow a better teaching or learning. It confused. So what we found is that this qualitative difference between expert and novice mental models couldn't be. It need to be. The teachers need to see this difference. They couldn't say, or they couldn't think it does not exist, or they couldn't think that only an analogy could solve the problem of teaching self-respiration. Because for these teachers, it has a meaning, but for novice students,
Of course,
it has no meaning.
Makes an analogy with anything that with something that the student doesn't know anyway. So it's that's make no sense. Yeah.
If I can make a comment. You show how dangerous can be a bad use of analogies, but at the same time, I would like to stress that analogies can also be a tool that can be exploited very effectively, both at the teaching level and by experts, because finally expert chemists make extensive use of analogies. So the point is not, the message is not that analogies have not to be used, but that analogies have to be carefully chosen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh, and these courses should be analyzed before be taught.
Definitely.
Okay, because the problem is not the analogy, but what is hidden and not taught. And suppose that students know about combustion and everything.
Yes, thank you so much. I don't see any further question in the chat. I just see a comment by Fazad, who says, regarding citizenship as the ultimate goal of education in reference to high school chemistry, he sends a link of the American Chemical Society textbook. And so thank you, Fazad, for this comment. And I think the time is over, and I give back the microphone to Olympia. Thanks to all the speakers.